This playthrough is rated M for mature.
Greetings, salutation viewers, Vauldemare back here with more Hakuōki, Stories of the Shinsengumi. Last time we heard the captain's disapproval of their new deputy commander, and our female main character finally decided to try and do something. Mainly because the roles told me I should actually do something instead of just wait around like a bump on a log. But we ran across some interesting things. Okita was waiting for someone, and Santon had found the secret of the corpse and was trying to take it for himself so he could finally be useful again. But how are we going to stop him? We'll find out right now, folks. Here we go. The roll of the die. I got a 3. Odd, which means scream! Santon had come to hate himself for being unable to fight alongside his comrades and friends. Even if they forgave him, he could never forgive himself. But so does that mean I'm not gonna... No, so scream, does that mean at some point I'm just gotta like call it really loudly? Okay. I doubt you can understand! Was it the sort of thing only a fellow swordsman could comprehend then? How could I convince him to listen to me? It was then in that moment of helplessness that I remembered Okita's words.
だけど、もし怖いものを見たら、すぐに声を上げて助けを呼ぶんだよ。
Well, if you see something scary, just make sure you scream right away, alright? Okita. Of course. I could never know what Santon felt, but another man devoted to the sword might. I had seen Okita near the entrance earlier. Perhaps he was still nearby. Okita! But even as I cried out, he drank it. Santon drew his head back and drained the vial in a single draught. No! With a soft click of glass, it rolled from Santon's palm to the floor of the common room. I didn't know if the single heartbeat I'd heard was mine or his. There was a moment of silence. Then, without warning, Santon screamed in agony and collapsed to the floor, his hands clawing mindlessly at his face. His hair began to turn white. Ah! Twilight vampire! God! Sorry. Sweat made tens of tiny rivulets down his face, and his fingers dug into his skin, just short, or he turned into an albino, one of the two, just sort of drawing blood. Santon, you have to hold on. His eyes spun in their sockets to focus on me, and his screams died away. Halfway to him, I stopped. I could see reason draining from him, but even more terrifying, I saw in his eyes something I hadn't seen since the night I'd first arrived in Kyoto. Behind me, I heard the door slide open.
Okita-kun. Desu ka?
Okita, you!
こんばんは、三男さん。
Good evening, Santon. His eyes flicked from Santon to the bottle on the floor, and then almost as an afterthought to me.
教えてくれてありがとう。
Thanks for the heads up, Hinata. Okita, Santon is... Oh, I got a romance point with Okita somehow. I think it's because he remembered my thing to him, and he's like, oh, you trust me.
実験は失敗です。Okita-kun、お願いできますか?
Yes, she's right. This experiment was a failure. Okita, I hate to impose, but if you could... That last small attempt at humor made him so pitiful that it was almost more than I could bear. When I looked up at Okita, his face was pale and tight, his mouth a thin line against a set jaw. He forced it into an attempt to grin, but there was more pain in his smile than humor.
安心してください。きちんと僕が解釈してあげますよ。
Don't worry, I'll help you die. What? In a smooth, deliberate motion, Okita laid his hand on the hilt of his sword, his fingers curling delicately around it, one by one. My body shook with what might have been a sob. You're not serious, are you? You aren't really gonna kill him, are you?
君さ。
I took a step towards him, but his cold eyes swiveled towards mine, and I froze.
やめてくれないかな、そういうの。部外者は黙っててよ。
Knock it off. You aren't part of this, so keep your mouth shut. Aren't part, but I'm...
私だって何？君、
You're...
新選組の一員にでもなったつもり？
You're what? You think you're part of the Shinsengumi? He didn't even move, but his tone hit like a slap. I'd been living with them for so long that my initial fear had almost completely disappeared. I felt like I'd found a place for myself.
忘れたって言うなら、もう一度言ってあげるよ。
If you've already forgotten, then let me remind you. I knew what was coming.
君は利用価値があるから生かしているだけで、別に僕たちの仲間とかじゃない。
We only keep you alive because you're useful. You are not one of us. He was right. I wasn't one of them. I was all alone. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Okita held my gaze for a moment longer, and then looked away. What could I say? Okita, Sanin, even the floor I stood on, they all seemed so far away. Sanin's white hair shook as his body writhed in pain. Okita's feet shifted into a fighting stance, and his grip tightened on his blade. They were almost close enough for me to touch, but it felt as if they were somewhere far away, in another world. All I could see was Okita's back. Then there was something red that looked like blood. I wondered what Okita's face looked like at that moment, but only the person who crumpled silently to the floor knew. Sanin! Blood had already begun to puddle beneath them, spread across the floor like a deep red tide. I'd barely taken a step when Okita's arm appeared in front of me.
近づかない方がいいよ。
Stay away from him. What? But why? He didn't owe me anything, least of all an explanation, but this was just... Okita's eyes met mine, hard and cold.
近づかない方がいいよ。動けないように深手を負わせたけど、また襲いかかってこないとは限らないしね。
Stay away from him. I hurt him pretty bad, but I don't know what the shit did to him. He might still be able to attack you. Huh?
あの薬を使ったのなら、この程度の傷では死にはしないし、死ねもしないんだよ。
What I did to him isn't enough to kill him, not after he drank that stuff. He's not going to die. Oh, thank goodness. I felt relief wash over me like morning sunlight. Even immobilized by Okita, however, Sanin was still unstable. If he lost control again, I had no doubt Okita would strike him down. But even so, Sanin was alive. I let that truth fill me, and I sank, exhausted, to the floor. Sanin fainted. Woken by my voice, several of the captains burst into the room. They all began to talk at once, but I didn't hear them. I was so tired, and so much had happened. If I could just lay down. When I awoke, I found myself back in my room with Okita sitting across from me.
手間がかかる子だよね、君って。
You can really be a pain, you know that? Oh. With my body and mind rested, I began to recall more of what happened the night before. After I had passed out, Okita had carried me back to my room.
状況を説明してくれるかな。どうして三男さんと一緒にいたの？
How about you explain what was going on last night? Why were you in there with Sanin? Okita had never been particularly pleasant to me, but his tone was even harsher than I had grown accustomed to. I felt like there was someone in the common room. For a moment I contemplated trying to lie to him, but dismissed that almost immediately. He would see right through me. I was curious, so I had a look. I found Sanin in there. Okita narrowed his eyes, but said nothing. Although my mind had cleared somewhat, it was still difficult to keep my thoughts organized. One, however, rose quickly to the surface. Is it true that my father had something to do with that stuff that Sanin drank?
三男さんから聞いたのそれ。
Did Sanin tell you that?
薬についても。
Oh, sorry, keep interrupting. His voice was even colder. I nodded. What point was there to lie now? He said it makes you stronger, but it drives you mad. Okita looked at me for a while longer, his eyes searching me for something. At last he sighed, and I saw his shoulders relax.
君は薬を作った人の娘だし、狂った大使とも実際に会ってるし。
You are the daughter of the man who made that stuff, and you've seen what happens to the men who go crazy.
知る権利くらい認めてあげてもいいかな。本当なら殺しちゃいたいとこだけど。
I suppose you do have a right to know. It'd be easier to kill you, but oh well. His tone was light, but it was no idle threat. I had no illusions about his capacity, both physically and emotional, physical and emotional, to end my life, if he saw fit to do so.
薬のこと、何か質問ある？一つくらいなら答えてあげるけど。
So, you got any questions? I suppose I can answer one. I hadn't expected such a rapid about face, and I struggled for a moment to put my words together. Why did the Shinsengumi get involved with something like this? It seemed like a foolishly simple question, but Okita didn't bother to mock me for it.
治安を守るために老子を取り締まる。なんて言うほど簡単じゃないのは君も分かってるよね。
Well, you know that our job isn't as simple as rounding up Ronin and bringing them back to the authorities, right? Yeah. I've been with them on patrol, and I've seen firsthand the hardships the Shinsengumi faced. Most Ronin were desperate about being faced with arrest, made them even more so. Often an arrest turned into an all-out fight.
最初の頃はとにかく人手が足りなかったんだ。
When we started out, we were really short on men. He added, not anymore, with a laugh. After Okita, the Shinsengumi recruit rates had shot up.
入隊希望者なんてめったにいないし、たまに来るのは腕が悪いやつばっかり。
Anyway, we didn't have many people asking to join, and those that did were pretty disappointing.
そんな時、幕府の偉い人が薬の実験を持ちかけてきたんだ。
That was when some guy from the shogunate showed up and offered to make us part of this experiment. They could have hardly said no to the shogun, even if they wanted to. Still, such an arrangement would have seemed beneficial to both parties. The shogunate got their treatment, and the Shinsengumi had a solution to the low number and quality of the troops. Then you knew what the side effects were, and you still made them take it? He smiled.
彼らも合意の上だよ。
We didn't make them take it. It was their choice.
新選組の規則に背いたら、大使は即座に切腹なんだけど。
Usually if you break our rules, we make you cut yourself open, but for these guys... Wait, what? I heard that the Shinsengumi took their code very seriously, but this... Ritual suicide seemed a little extreme.
切腹するか、薬を飲むか、好きな方を選ばせただけだよ。
For these guys, we gave them a choice. Kill yourself or drink the shogun's concoction. He laughed as if something about that was funny.
ね、かわいそうでしょ?
You get it? Don't you feel bad for them? I couldn't think of anything to say. What sort of choice was that? A certain death by your own hand or madness and death by someone else's? The men that I encountered that winter night, had their last thoughts as men been hopes that they might survive the madness? It sounded horrible.
簡単に強くなれる薬なんて便利だよね。実際は全然大したことなかったんだけど。
Something that makes you strong and hard to kill should be really great, right? Sure, so long as you don't mind the side effects. Like anal leakage. Sorry. The smile never left his face, but I could see a spark of anger in his eyes. Although he'd never say as much, he was worried for Sanin. I was worried too. Was Sanin okay? Would he change? My stomach was twisting itself into knots. At long last, morning came. One by one, the captains returned to the common room, tired and bleary-eyed from their long night. It was Inui's entrance that broke the silence. It seems he has made it through the hardest part. The room breathed a sigh of relief. Silent sigh of relief. He's still asleep. Looks pretty peaceful.
Sannan-san, 狂っちまってるのかい?
So Sanin's gone crazy? Inui simply shook his head.
確かなことは起きるまでわからんな。見た目には昨日までと変わらないんだが。
We don't know, sure, until he wakes up, but he looks just like he always has. That was when the door slid open.
おはようございます。皆さん。
Good morning, everyone. The tension that had relaxed at Inui's interest pulled tight as a drum, like an anus. At least I thought they don't do this when I just walk into the room. Then I realized I was comparing myself to Ito, and wondered why on earth I would do something like that.
あら、顔色が優れませんのね。昨晩の騒ぎと何か関係がありました。
My, you all look rather glum. Something to do with last night's experiment, I presume? His position wasn't just the result of politics, then. There would simply be no simply ignoring the incident, it appeared.
いや、そうだな。
No. Desperately, Kondo's eyes flew around the room, looking for someone who might give him a story.
よし、ごまかせ、サノ。
Sano, make something up!
あ、俺が？実は昨日。
What? Me? Well, you. Sorry. What? Me? Well, you see yesterday. Hey. What? Me? Oh, well, you see yesterday. Sorry, I had to get my Irish up for some reason.
大根役者は出しゃばらないでくれるかな。
You're a miserable actor. Stay out of this. Okita's smile was bitter and thin. They sat back down.
そういうことは説明の上手な人に任せましょうね。
How about you leave the explanation to someone who can string two words together, huh? He looked at Saito expectantly, and the other man nodded once.
伊藤参謀がお察しの通り、昨晩、豚舎内にて事件が発生しました。
As you suspect, Deputy Commander Ito, there was an incident yesterday here at our headquarters. Furthermore, he continued, the situation was grim. Saito then proceeded to outline as much of the truth as he could, his eyes never wavering from Ito's face.
参謀のお心に負荷をかけてしまう結果は我々も望むところではありません。
We do not wish to trouble you with such matters just yet, Deputy Commander. By way of apology, he made a short bow.
今晩にでも改めた場を設け、お伝えさせていただきたく存じます。
If you wish, I would be happy to provide you with a more detailed report this afternoon.
まあ。
Oh my. Oh my. Ito's eyes narrowed and he looked slowly around the hall. A mischievous smile played about his lips.
事情はわかりましたよ。今晩のお呼ばれ、心待ちにしておりますわ。
Very well. I comprehend your situation. I shall look forward to receiving the details this evening. With another strange smile, Ito stood, nodded slightly, and left the room.
なんだか見逃してもらえたみたいだけど、もしかして斉藤君の対応が気に入ったのかな？
Feels like he let it slide this time. Maybe he just liked how Saito handled it. What? Yes, Saito had been respectful, and at least on the surface, forthcoming, both of which had likely pleased Ito, but what did he mean about letting it slide?
幹部が勢ぞろいしてる場に三男さんだけいねえんだぞ。
We shouldn't have let them see us all together. I looked at him, confused.
あの人絡みで何か起きたってことぐらい、伊藤ならすぐカンパできんだろう。
The only man missing was Sennen. It won't take Ito long to realize something's happened to him. Oh. Then Ito had likely guessed at what had taken place, but decided not to press the issue. I was beginning to see what Kondo saw in him. There was certainly no doubt that he was clever and observant. Ah. I had looked up just in time to see Seinen shuffle through the door. His face was pale, but apart from that, he looked like he always had.
三男さん、起きてていいのかい？
Seinen? Are you sure you should be up and about? Seinen's only response was a small, sad smile.
少し気だるいようですね。これも薬の副作用でしょう。
I'm only a little tired. A side effect of my new condition, I suppose.
あの薬を飲んでしまうと日中の活動が困難になりますから。
Those who have taken the drought often find that working during the daylight hours is especially taxing. Basically vampires. In other words, it was working. Seinen was already transformed.
私はもう人間ではありません。
I am no longer a human being. He smiled.
ああ、君が生きていてくれてよかった。俺たちはそれで十分だと。
Who cares? Who cares that you are alive? That's good enough for me. I could see the beginnings of tears well up in Kandu's eyes, but the rest of the men were more reserved. They were happy to see their friend alive, but what did his resurrection cost him?
それで腕は治ったんですか?
So, your arm's better, I'm guessing?
まだ本調子ではありませんから、自分でもよくわからないのですが。
I haven't fully recovered yet, so I wouldn't withhold any final judgment, but... He lifted his left arm, the arm that day before it hung limp at his side, flexed his hand.
治っているようですね。少なくとも不便がない程度には。
It seems to have been healed. At least, very least, it is no longer a hindrance. Thank goodness. If he had gone through all that just to find his arm still lame and useless, that would have been
今の三男さんは
funnily
昼間
bad.
に弱いんだろう。そんな状態でタイムに参加できんのか。
You can't go out in the sunlight though, right? Will you still be able to fight with us? If daylight drained one's energy, living a normal life would be difficult enough, never mind fighting alongside the Shinsengumi.
私は死んだことにすればいい。
Best you simply say I died. His voice was calm, almost careless.
これから私は薬の成功例として新選組を束ねていこうと思っています。
From now on, I will serve as a corpse to remind them and us that success is possible.
それ本気か。自分が何言ってるのか分かってんのか。
What? Have you lost your mind? Do you know what you're saying?
分かっていますとも。長倉君こそ忘れたのですか?
Of course I do. Do you, Nagakura?
我々は薬の存在を伏せるよう幕府から命じられているのですよ。
The Shogun had ordered us to keep this thing a secret. Nagakura fell silent.
私さえ死んだことにすれば、今までのように薬の存在は隠し通せる。
If I die, the Shogun's secret remains so. Leaving no room for argument, he continued.
薬から副作用が消えるのであれば、それを使わない手はないでしょう。
Besides, if the side effects can be managed or even removed, then what reason do we have not to use it? To a man, they were against his ideas. To a man, they were against his idea, though none of them said anything. Who'd want to consign a friend to a life of secrecy, lived in the shadows?
そもそも薬の実験は幕府からのお達しでもあるしな。
We were given a task by the general Shogun himself. What task was it? What does Sandon's new transform abilities give him? And what does the MC have to do with any of this? Well, we know some things, but will she ever find her father? Probably not in the next episode, but we'll find out some more things. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next episode.